I was 76 when I realized someone in my family wanted me gone. Not dead. Not hurt. Just remove, shifted aside, cleaned off the chest word like forgotten piece. What surprised me the most wasn't the betrayal itself. I grew up in a household where envy was second language. But who decided to orchestrate it? My nephew, Caleb, the quiet one, the polite one, the one who hugged me at Christmas and carried grocery bags to my door without me even asking. But here's the thing I learned too late. Quiet men don't lack ambition. They just lack noise. The first sign was an envelope slipped under my door. I thought it was an advertisement. We get plenty of them in my neighborhood, the kind that promise new gutters, installed by certified angels. But when I picked it up, the paper was far too thick for junk mail. Inside was letter from retirement facility I had never heard of. Dear Issasalina White, we are processing your application for assisted living. Representative will contact you soon to confirm your transition date. The words like they belonged in Space Shuttle Manual, not letter about my life. I read it twice, 3 times. Then I looked around my home. My soft beige curtains, my little ceramic house on the mantel, my ficus named Arnold. As if expecting them to tell me who had submitted this. No one answered. I called the number listed at the bottom. Mrs. White said, cheerful receptionist. Your nephew spoke to us yesterday. He said you were very excited to move in. Excited. I looked at Arnold the ficus. Does this look like excitement? He didn't reply. Typical. Who submitted that application? I asked through clenched teeth. Your nephew, she said. Caleb White. My heart flattened like paper. Caleb, my sweet boy who baked me lemon bread and called me every Sunday. The one I helped raise after his parents died. The one who said I was like second mother. The one who never asked for anything. Except maybe he did. And maybe I never saw it. I called him 10 times. He ignored every call. The 11th time he answered, sounding annoyed. Man, Hilly, I'm in meeting. What application did you file? But I asked, he paused, no, that, yes, I meant to tell you. You meant to tell me you're institutionalizing me. He sighed, annoyed, like I was the one being unreasonable. Man, Ellie, come on. You're alone in that big house. You need support. Professionals, people who know what they're doing. I know what I'm doing, Maya snapped. Do, he asked quietly. Something in his tone. Something calculated, careful, patronizing. Sliced right through me. You're not safe on your own, he continued. And it's just a matter of time before I am perfectly capable, I said. That's what you think, he whispered. I felt something cold in that sentence, warning, threat, foreshadowing of something bigger and far more orchestrated. Why are you doing this? I asked softly. Silence. In. We'll talk later. He hung up. I sat at my kitchen table staring at nothing, feeling the air pressing around me. Caleb wasn't impulsive. He wasn't emotional. He wasn't stupid. If he wanted me out of my house, it wasn't out of concern. It was for reason. I just didn't know it yet. That night, I checked my mailbox. Another letter, this time from Bay. Verification requested. Please confirm your cosign authorization for real estate refinance. Real estate refinance authorization. Someone had tried to refinance my home with me listed as cosigner. I felt my chest tighten as I scanned the document, recognizing the handwriting on the signature line. Neat, precise, familiar. Not mine. Caleb's, my own nephew, had practiced my signature on birthday cards for years. Looks like he'd upgraded to financial fraud. I called my bank. Mrs. White of the representative said gently, this request came from someone claiming to have your consent. Did it look like I was present? I asked. Well, no, but the signature matches, so I laughed hard. Why have arthritis in 3 fingers? My signature hasn't matched anything since 2014. Cancel the request. Yes, ma'am. I hung up, hands shaking, heart steadying, mind crystallizing. Caleb wasn't helping me. Caleb wasn't concerned. Caleb wasn't protecting me. He was planning something methodical, intentional, legal. He was building case. He was preparing for the moment the world believed I was incompetent, mentally declining, financially confused, unsafe alone. He was orchestrating slow, quiet erasure, and for what? For the house? For my savings. For the inheritance that wasn't even his yet. I felt something heavy settle in my debt. This wasn't about care. This was about possession. The next morning, I woke up to knocking. 3 sharp knocks, authoritative, unfriendly. When I opened the door, 2 people stood on my porch. Woman with clipboard, man with badge. Was this White? The woman asked. Yes, but we're here to report of mental instability and unsafe living conditions. I exhaled through my teeth. Let me guess, I said. My nephew called you. We cannot disclose. If it was him, I snapped. Come inside. They hesitated and followed me in. My home was clean, organized, neat, no signs of uncleanliness, confusion, neglect. Nothing that would validate Caleb's claims. I offered them tea. The man declined. The woman looked around, puzzled. You seem perfectly capable, she said. Well, thank goodness, so I replied. I was worried I'd forgotten how to live. She smiled stiffly. This happens sometimes. Overprotective family members. Overprotective. I almost laughed. Before they left, the man said, your nephew requested to be notified of the outcome. Should we have known? I interrupted. Do not speak to him on my behalf ever again. But they nodded and left. I closed the door quietly. Then, for the first time in my life, I locked it. That afternoon, I called only one person who would understand. Her name was Joanne. Former neighbor, a retired courthouse clerk, lived 3 streets over, knew every law better than God himself. She arrived in under 15 minutes. How bad? She asked, dropping her purse on my sofa. I handed her the letters to read them, face tightening with every line. Oh, honey, she murmured. He's not just trying to put you in home, Manila. He's trying to build case to take full legal control of your estate. I swallowed. You're telling me I'm being... Joanne nodded, as she said, and he's good at hiding the trap. So then her eyes sharpened. But we're better. She pulled out folder. Thick, heavy, worn at the edges. What's that? Everything you need to protect yourself legally, financially, medically, and personally, she said. The complete don't you dare touch my life kit. I stare. She opened the folder, revealing star power of attorney revocation form, star updated will template, star independent medical evaluation request, star property freeze request, star list of recommended lawyers, star in sheet titled assigns family member is building case against you. She tapped the last line, the Calibus following almost every step. I felt my stomach drop. What do? I whispered. Joanne leaned forward. You fight dirty, she said, because he already is. I looked at the door, at my home, at everything Caleb thought he could take from me, and something inside me clicked. Not fear, not sadness, resolve. He wants war, I said quietly. Joanne smirked. Then let's give him one. But Caleb didn't come by the next day. He didn't call either, and that told me everything I needed to know. He'd sent his pawns, the wellness check, the mental instability reports, the falsified paperwork. And now he was waiting for the effect, waiting for me to panic, waiting for me to crumble, waiting for me to prove his case for him. But I didn't panic. I cleaned my kitchen, watered Arnold the ficus, put on my nicest earrings, and went to war, not loudly, not angrily. Quiet wars are the ones that win. Joanne and I spent the entire morning assembling portfolio strong enough to punch Caleb's scheme straight through with its polished little teeth. We sat at my dining table, surrounded by paperwork, legal pads, and bottle of peppermint schnapps that served as both refreshments and courage. Okay, Joanne. Flipping through one form, we need to revoke any previous general power of attorney you might have signed. Well, I've never signed one, I said. Are you sure? I frowned. Well, Caleb once brought me a stack of papers and said they were for utilities. I didn't read them. Joanne's pen froze midair. Oh, sweet lord, as she muttered, he duped you into signing something. The room felt suddenly colder. What does that mean? I whispered. It means, she said, pressing her lips together, we need to assume Caleb already has some legal foothold. Maybe minor, maybe major, we can't guess it. She turned to me sharply. Ellie, from here on out, nothing gets signed. Not mail, not deliveries, not holiday cards, not birthday surprises, not damn pizza box. I nodded. No signatures, I repeated. Good, she stood. Next we gather allies. Who? I asked. Joanne smiled, witchy little smile. But everyone who knows you're not crazy. We went door to door on my street. Not to gossip. Oh no, to collect statements. The Sis Patel across the street, who saw me gardening every day. The Henderson twins next door, who said, Miss Ellie bakes better cookies than our mom. Oh, Mr. Miller, who was 92 and still flirting with me every time I walked by. The entire quilting club. My librarian. My pharmacist. Even the mailman who said, that woman remembers every stamp count from 2019. She's sharper than I am, and we gathered 13 statements in one afternoon, but the best came from the last house on the block, the house of Officer Danny Rubin, the young police officer who always stopped to chat when I watered the lawn. When Joanne and I explained the situation, he didn't laugh or shout. Instead, he said, "Was this right? Caleb was at the station last week." My blood chilled. What for? I asked. Officer Rubin looked uncomfortable, but he was asking about the procedure for declaring an elderly relative no longer fit for independent living. Joanne inhaled sharply. And he continued, he was asking how to submit evidence of cognitive decline. Anonymously, I felt my heart kick inside my chest. Caleb wasn't playing around. He was building dossier case story where I was the unstable woman he would save. Officer Rubin leaned forward. But here's the thing, he said. He worded everything too carefully. Most people asking about these things are concerned or emotional. He sounded rehearsed. Because he is, Joanne said. The officer nodded. I'll write statement for you, he said. And if he contacts the department again, I'll let you know. We left his porch in silence. Joanne finally muttered, that boy isn't trying to help you. He's trying to erase you. That was the word. It fit too well. It wasn't about assisted living. It wasn't about my health. It wasn't about concern. Caleb wanted full control of the house, of my accounts, of my future, and he wanted it without me in the way. But why now? Why so suddenly? The answer came 2 days later, and it came from the most unlikely place. I went to the grocery store, nothing unusual, just eggs, carrots, coffee, and a cheap chocolate I pretended to buy. For guests when I returned, car I didn't recognize was parked in my driveway, black, shiny, too new for anyone in my neighborhood. Then 2 men stepped out. Not young, not old, just cold. One wore a suit that looked too expensive for daylight. The other held clipboard. Mrs. White, the clipboard one asked, "We're here regarding an estate evaluation." "What estate?" He checked his paper. "Yours." My pulse quickened. "Who sent you?" I demanded. They exchanged glances. "Your nephew." "Of course he did." "What did he tell you?" I asked. They hesitated. Clipboard man cleared his throat. He said you recently updated your will and requested full value assessment. Due to anticipated transitions, I repeated flatly, you mean my death? They didn't respond. I looked at the men, then at my house, then back at the men, and it clicked. The refinance attempt, the wellness check, the power of attorney trick, the assisted living application, the bank involvement, the estate evaluation. These weren't random. They were steps. Steps and plan crafted long before I realized it existed. But plans with steps have one vulnerability. If you kick out the foundation, the whole building collapses. So I said the sweetest sentence I'd said in years. Gentlemen, please leave my property before I call the police and inform them you are trespassing under false authorization. They left, but not before one of them muttered, your nephew said you might get confused. Well, I smiled. Though, honey, Weiss said, if I was confused, you'd already be in my basement. But he blanched. They drove away fast. When I told Joanne about it, she didn't panic. She simply pinched the bridge of her nose. This isn't about the house, she whispered. No. She took out her phone and started typing. What are you doing? I asked. Checking county records. She scrolled, then stopped. Her eyes widened. Oh my god, she shoved the screen toward me. On it was document, land use proposal filed by company I didn't recognize, but under authorized contacts was name I didn't know. Caleb White. The proposal was dated 6 months ago. Before any of this began, I blinked. What? Is this? Joanne sat back, stunned. It's development proposal, she said. For what? For high-end rental project, she said. Modern renovation. Investors. Huge money. So. Well, Joanne whispered. Caleb submitted preliminary permit requests, listing your property as phase 1. I stared at the screen, then at her, and that nothing. He wants to demolish my house, I said. Joanne swallowed. As she whispered, he wants to tear it down and replace it with luxury complex. My pulse thudded like war drums, and to do that, he needs the house. But no, Joanne said, but to do that, he needs you out. We sat in silence, heavy, suffocating silence, until finally I said, then we make sure he never gets single break. But smiled. Oh, sweetheart, she said, that's the spirit I've been waiting for. We form plan, real one. Not reactive, not defensive, strategic, step by step, weapon by weapon. But first, Joanne said, there's someone you need to talk to. Who? She pulled out phone number scribbled on sticky note. Your lawyer? No. Your doctor? No. Your pastor? But Joanne snorted. Please. Then who? She handed me the paper. Anna was a name I hadn't said in years. Marion Hawthorne, my estranged sister, the one I hadn't spoken to in 15 years, the one Caleb thought I'd forgotten, the one Caleb didn't know was the owner of my property, the one whose name was still on the original title, and my blood went cold. Joanne, I whispered, if Caleb is trying to get the house, then he's about to realize, she said with wicked smile, that he picked the wrong old woman, the wrong Jenners, and definitely the wrong family. If I stare at the number, at last, Joanne said, we need back. We go on the offensive. If I breathe slowly, then we start tomorrow. No, but she corrected. We start now. But Joanne gave me Marion's number like it was small detonator. Don't call her like child, she warned. Call her like you mean business. Use her full name. Use the old family code if you have to. Remind her how stubborn people can be when they're cross. Oh, I thumbed the digits. My hands were steady. Years of knitting and paperwork and counting other people's moods make person precise. A line clicked. Hello. Marion's voice came softer than I remembered, older, fitted with distance. For a moment, the ghost of our childhood. Summer heat, stolen peaches, our mother scolding us for racing the chickens. Breathe between us, Marion, I said. It's Ellie. The silence stretched like an old photograph. Ellie, that she whispered. I need you, I said simply. There was sharp exhale on the other end. Like someone finding an old woman choosing to keep going. Where are you? She asked. That home, I said. Do you have time? She did. She came the afternoon in car that still had our father's bumper sticker tucked under the dashboard for luck. When Marion stepped onto my porch, I nearly cried from seeing the shape of her shoulders again. Practical, unbowed, the kind of woman who'd built grocery store account with her own hands and still kept an immaculate ledger. Ellie, she said in, for the first time since we were girls, fighting over toy. Her voice didn't have the distance, it had hinge. Marion, I said, do you own half my house? As she blinked, then looked at the loft box on my table like it suddenly had new meaning. When Dad left the deed, she said he wanted both of us to have something to fight over when he was gone. It was his ugly joke. I kept my half because I never trusted the world to be kind to women who needed things. Her jaw set. You told me once if anyone ever tried to take what belonged to us to come find you. But I didn't know if he meant me literally, I said, and we both laughed. The kind of laughter that polishes off the last of the fear. Marion reached into her bag and produced thin folder, papers crisp as new leaves, title work, original deeds, joint ownership, signed, sealed, catalog. You still have the other copy, she said. If I kept it in the safety deposit box under my name, it's time we use it. We used it. First, Joanne filed an injunction asserting Marion's legal interests in requesting an immediate halt to any property evaluation or development that referenced Phase 1. The injunction referenced the original deed, Marion's signature, and our combined intent. Dad's handwriting scrawled on the back of the deed like small loving threat. Protect it, fight for it. Don't and build a hotel where roses used to grow. Caleb's face when the injunction arrived at his door was steady and collapsed in certainty. He paced his tiny living room like someone trying to hold back bad weather with broom. He called, begged, stomped. He hired lawyer with blessed card and very loud suit. He tried to buy the county planner on whim. He made mistakes, reckless ones. Because men panic when their tidy plans hit actual law, we did not simply push into home. We pulled the ladder away, and we turned on the lights. Joanne worked the bureaucratic web like a spider humming with small satisfaction. She filed complaints, every single one. Forged signatures, attempted coercion, fraudulent applications to the retirement facility, attempted bank access, misrepresentation to county officials. Each complaint was a needle sewing a pattern across his actions. X came the neighbors. We put together what we called the community packet. Photos of my house, testimonies about its history, a petition signed by every household on our block opposing the development. The petition was a small, rude weapon. One afternoon of door knocking, 6 dozen cookies, and the truth laid out with the gentle vigor of people who loved the place and refused to have it gutted. Somebody's quick profit. Caleb's investors began to get nervous. When plan starts to smell like trouble, money runs faster than lies. The developer who had promised him a tidy slice of the pie went quiet. Meetings were rescheduled. Checks bounced on excuses. He called me the night the first investor withdrew. It's just delays, he said, voice thin. We'll find others. Don't be dramatic. Don't be greedy, I answered. There's difference. Is tongue found, entitled and held it like ham-handed defense. Then we made him small in public, not by shouting, by documentation. We slick copy of the recorded call, the one where he had admitted to trying to forge my signature into the county files and to the right hands, waiting for the exact moment when his hubris would force his mouth to move in front of camera, in front of microphone, in front of an official who takes ethics seriously. That moment came at a public hearing called to discuss the proposed zoning change. People were there in their Sunday bests and their gardening gloves. A pennant's fluttering microphones creaked. Caleb strutted up like a man carrying the future on his shoulders. His investors sat behind him with the tight smiles of people who think money is a shield. Caleb took the podium, gave his polished speech about revitalization and community benefit, though he quoted numbers. Barely understood, he smiled into the lights. Then Joanne began the questioning. Calm, polite, precise, she asked the county planner about the permit process, and she asked whether the title was clear, and she asked whether the proper notifications had been made. The planner fumbled. He admitted paperwork, oversight, small oversight, but in bureaucracy, an oversight is an unlocked door. Then came the day the recording played. Someone in the audience, our audience, pressed play from small tablet. Caleb's voice filled the hall, unguarded and candid. Old people don't check paperwork, he had said on that audio. They sign with flourish. It's easy. There was murmur, then touch like wind stopping. Caleb's face flushed crimson as his world, the one he had built in spreadsheets and bright PowerPoints, began to leak. He tried to speak. His mouth opened, closed. The investors looked terrified. One of them thrust his hand out like lifeline. The press began to scribble. Someone from the developer's firm started to whisper. On phone, the men in suits exchanged glances that tasted like regret. Later, in small office full of cheap coffee and loud phones, the county attorney called us quietly. We have grounds to recommend denial, she said, voice without drama, efficient. Not because the project is bad per se, but because of possible improprieties in the chain of title and evidence of attempted fraud. We will be initiating an investigation. Caleb's knees buckled that week under the weight of the investigation. The bank froze the refinance. The retirement facility rescinded their evaluation. The man with the clipboard who tried to appraise my property apologized publicly and sent retraction to the county for having acted under authorization. We would have thought the victory sweet enough. It was. But the thing with revenge is that it tastes different when it's righteous. Not like bile, but like something polished. We were not content to simply stop him. We wanted him accountable, so Joanne called the prosecutor. She walked in carrying the folder of forged documents and the audio and the petition and 13 statements and the county planner's notes. She put it on the prosecutor's desk, laying down gauntlet. We have pattern, she said. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was planned. The prosecutor took the files and read like man assembling map. 2 weeks later, detective visited my home. He was kind in the way that means I'm on your side, and trim in way that spoke of many notebooks and more patience than a man is usually given by fate. They interviewed neighbors, taxpayers, the retirement facility, the bank. They followed threads. Quiet threads. And when they pulled, they found web, Caleb's series of shell applications, attempted transfers, and ring of small-time investors willing to claim plausible deniability. The resulting charges were precise: attempted financial exploitation, forgery, attempted fraud, and attempted coercion of an elder. The judge assigned a restraining order pending the case and ordered that Caleb have no access to my accounts or my property. The first time I saw him in handcuffs, sliding his palms into steel like man learning the geometry of consequences. I expected the satisfaction to be hot and roaring. Instead it was quiet like dawn. He looked at me, and for a long sliver of time our gazes crossed. There was no pleading in his face now. Only tiredness the color of bad coffee. I felt corrosive mix of sadness and tough temperate relief. Someone I loved had become someone who could be held accountable. The world, messy and unforgiving, had finally done what love sometimes cannot do. It had required him to answer. After the arraignment, we went home. Marian fixed tea while Joanne wrote letters and the neighbors brought pies. The house felt full in the particular satisfying way that comes from knowing the community has your back, that your life is owned not by one greedy nephew, but by a dozen messy, imperfect people who plant tomatoes. And remember, in the weeks that followed, Caleb's reputation crumbled like old plaster. Friends who had liked his party photos stopped liking them. Investors who had whispered promises of fast returns stopped returning his calls. His lawyer counseled plea bargains, and his mother called, begging. He offered to repay babbled apologies that fell like dried leaves. I did not want to watch him burn, and I wanted him remade. When the court record finally closed, plea to lesser charges, restitution ordered, community service, and mandatory counseling. I accepted form of restitution that felt honest. He would work under supervision on city project to restore old neighborhoods. He would be assigned to work crews that included men and women he had once shuffled past. He would learn with gloves on his hands and sweat on his brow what it means to build instead of take. A day he began the community labor. He stood in my driveway and tied his shoes like a man tender to the idea of a different life. He thanked me in a voice small and real. Thank you, he mouthed, but I didn't hear it. I watched him walk away, and in that watching was forgiveness of the shape that is not soft but practical, letting him learn, letting him fail, and perhaps reassemble into something better. We had our small celebrations, not loud, just casserole dishes, and Pie and Marian's quiet jokes about how we both finally proven father wrong about being the rightful owner of the garden gnome. A neighborhood came together and planted small garden out front, rye, marigolds, and herbs. The city granted small preservation status to my street because of community value. That alone was the kind of bureaucratic revenge that feels delicious. Paperwork wielded like sword in favor of the small, stubborn human things. I kept the ring from the lockbox on my finger for months. It felt heavier some days and lighter others. People asked if I was done with revenge. I laughed. Revenge, I told them, was just justice in costume. Sometimes in the evenings when the light pushed through the curtains and Arnold the ficus threw a small shadow-like hand, I would sit on the porch and listen. There would be the sound of kids playing 2 streets over, a phone conversation on a stoop, a radio playing some old song that always smelled of summer, and sometimes late at night I would think of Caleb. Not with hatred, but with wry, fierce hope. The law had done its work. Community had done its work. He had been forced by consequence to learn humility. Marian and I drank tea and argued about gardening plans and who had once stolen whose dress. Attic, we repaired the tangible things that are easily fixed. Loose floorboards, leaky gutters, an old faucet that never quite turned right. Those small acts felt like stitches. I learned, in those months, an essential thing about the kind of revenge that heals rather than hollows. It must leave room for the human to return. You break person into dust, and there's nothing left to cultivate. You make them face the work, give them the tools, make them own the ruin and the repair. That is the sort of change that can, in rare cases, be mercy wrapped as consequence. On late afternoon, as the sun slid low and the marigolds flamed, my church bell in the distance rang out, soft and sure. My phone buzzed. Text from Joanne with gif of the unseen cat. And by laughed, I had been robbed, yes, of my time of trust, of sleep, but I had not lost my place in the world. Caleb learned that every time you try to take someone's life as if it were ledger, the ledger has ways of balancing itself. Old women remember receipts. Communities remember names. Lawyers remember signatures. And sometimes, often even, the quietest people can build the loudest cages. At night, when the house settles and the world is properly stilled, I take the ring off my finger and set it on the nightstand. I think of my father's handwriting on the old deed and his small, unromantic advice to fight for what was yours, and I sleep because I know finally that the house, the garden, and my future are safe, and because I have learned the easiest truth of all. If they think you are a piece to be moved, move first.